Good evening. The Rio Rancho Public Schools Board of Education meeting for Monday, April 24th is now called to order. Please arise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Gary Tripp will lead us.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone out to our board meeting tonight. It's always nice to have a full room here in our boardroom. So my name is Amanda Galbraith and I am the board president. Will you please give us a roll call?
Amanda Galbraith.
Present.
Jeffrey Morgan.
present.
Noreen Scott.
Present.
Gary Tripp.
Present.
Jessica Tyler.
Present.
And we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll start off tonight with some introductory comments by our superintendent of schools, Dr. V. Sue Cleveland.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here this evening. That's okay. I'm sure glad you have, but I have it all committed to memory. So it's very, very good. Thank you. Okay, I just would like to begin with just some introductory remarks, just very briefly about proposed school time changes, start times and ending times. School schedules are changing for almost all school districts across the state of New Mexico. This last session, the New Mexico legislature did mandate an increase in the number of instructional hours for pre-K all the way through 12th grade. And so that was good, but it has presented a set of challenges in making that a reality. One of the biggest challenges for Rio Rancho, as you probably know, is transportation funding. And it's very hard for us to be compliant with these new requirements because of the shortages we have in terms of buses and in terms of drivers. It is anticipated that next year we might be over $3 million short in the area of transportation. We have, however, had a committee that's been working now for several months, looking at the options, trying to comply with the new regulations and come forward with some proposed starting and ending times. And so those have gone out. I really would encourage you to look for those and to respond to those. We are very interested in what you have to say. And if you have additional input and suggestions, we are very open to that. I certainly would want you to know that we're working within some very limited parameters with regards to schedules. And you may have been following that in Albuquerque, Las Cruces, some other communities, and they too are struggling to come up with something to meet those new requirements. But again, transportation is the biggest challenge for us. Before this meeting, we had a finance committee of the board, and they met to review the new information we have on the 2023-2024 school budget. We know that we are seeing an increase in funding for the district, so that's good news, and that will help support some of the new mandates. We don't, however, have our final numbers yet, and so the information we shared with the board was preliminary, but it does look like there is going to be an increase in funding next year, and it will allow us to do some of the things the legislature has mandated. Some years we've had mandates and didn't have the money to pay for them, so we're really appreciative in a year when those mandates come with the funding, and it's looking fairly positive. But again, we are still working through the budget and should have more information in the next couple of weeks. We have some very expensive items in this budget. good things such as the increased salary for our educational assistants, moving almost doubling in up to 25,000. Very well deserved and very much needed. Hope that, as Board Member Tripp said, it's the beginning, not the end, but it certainly is a positive. And then school staff are expecting a 6% raise. Initially, we had shared with you on another meeting an average, but that average language was removed by the governor, and so it is now 6%. As I mentioned before, we do project again to have a shortfall for transportation. We have some commendations this evening. The first one is Intel Reading for Miles. I just want to say we've had a long and very positive relationship with Intel Corporation, and we appreciate the things that they do for our schools, the programs they work with us on. And so this is a program that they supported. This commendation will be presented by Carl Leppelman, our Chief Academic Officer, and Amanda Ball, the elementary school's lead librarian, and also she is the librarian at MLK Elementary School. And they have some great news to share with you this evening. They will share with you the top winners at each of our elementary school campuses. And we want to congratulate all of our student winners. They did a really great job, and you will see all of the minutes that they read in the elementary schools across the district. Our second commendation is for the donation of glasses for some of our students who are colorblind. Mr. Ronald Nelden, in partnership with Enchroma, has generously donated 10 pairs of colorblind correction glasses to Rio Rancho students from across the district. I will tell you that Mr. Nelden is a distinguished combat veteran of the United States Air Force, and he has personally donated and secured donations to provide these glasses to some of our students who have never quite experienced color as most of us do. Jerry Reeder will share a little information about this project and introduce Mr. Nelden. Mr. Nelden and students that are with us for this are with us for the presentation this evening. I would tell you this is the second year of this project, and Mr. Nelden plans to continue this wonderful effort next year. We also are going to have a report from another good partner with the district, and that's the Boys and Girls Club. We appreciate the efforts of the Boys and Girls Club in Rio Rancho to provide support services for many of our families and students. And this year they began a new initiative to provide after-school programs for students at some of our elementary schools. One was not included because of a major renovation going on there. There was just simply no room, but hope to expand that program this year. They plan to share with the board the successes, some of the challenges of this program, and also some of the other things they do in Rio Rancho. Information on this project will be provided by Renee Salcedo, who is our Secondary School Improvement Officer, Colby Wilson, who's the Chief Encouragement Officer, I love that title, for Boys and Girls Club, and Marjanelle Vigil, who is the Sandoval Area Director of the Boys and Girls Club. We will have two reports this evening on instructional materials. It will be on the materials being recommended for fine arts and for social studies. The fine arts adoption is K through 12, all grades. The social studies is for secondary only. Kurt Schmidt, who is our Director of Fine Arts, will provide the information for the board, not only on the recommendations, but the process that they followed to get to that point in adopting new materials. And I will tell you, it's a very comprehensive process as we select new materials for the district. The Social Studies Instructional Materials Report will be presented by Todd Resch, Executive Director of Secondary Curriculum and Instruction, and Erica Lozano, who is an Instructional Coordinator for the Humanities. And they too will share information about the adoption processes and their recommendations. But have you know also that Board President Galbraith also served on the committee. A great deal of time and effort goes into this selection process. We only get new materials on a cycle of, on an average, 8 to 10 years. So we use these materials for a long time. And it's really important that we get good materials. And so it's a very thorough process, and the board is going to be asked to review and vote on the recommendations presented this evening. We will also begin our discussion about bond election priorities for 2023. This is just another one of those difficult tasks because our facility and technology needs are far greater than the available resources, always the case. And so we have to prioritize, and that's a really hard thing to do because we do have a lot of needs in lots of different areas. But they will be bringing the bond priorities as recommended by a committee who has worked for several months on establishing those priorities. We realize this information is coming to the board late, and so it's short notice. So I do want to emphasize the board does not have to make a decision this evening, but we did want to begin the conversation with you, and that we are hoping that if the board can take action in May or the very first meeting in June. We only do have one board meeting in May. All right. And then we have a request this evening for SFE, a contract extension. You are being asked to approve Amendment 5 regarding food services for our district. This would extend the current contract with SFE for one more year, July 1st to July 30th. And the RFP process and all of the key activity dates will be explained by Michael Madrid, who is our Director of Purchasing. I do want you to know that we've had a series of very detailed discussions between the district and SFE as we look towards providing good tasting and healthy meals for all of our students. And then we have, to kind of close out the board meeting, some second readings. The board received information about these policy changes at the last board meeting. This evening, the board will be asked to review them again and consider approval for the following. Policy 604, which is an acceptance of grant awards, which basically says the board has to approve the grants that come to the district. Revenues from investments, which is policy 605. Mike Baker will be presenting both of those. And then policy 1001 has to do with student interzone transfers. And Sherry Carver, our executive director of student services, will present that information. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cleveland. Okay, we'll now go to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations.
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to request several changes to the budget, or to the
Had
agenda.
a finance meeting.
Under item 1, I'd like to request that we move item G ahead of item F,
Okay.
and then also remove item 4, the executive session, from the agenda.
Okay.
So I'd like to make that motion, please.
Okay, thank you.
This is Secretary Noreen Scott. I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Noreen Scott with the changes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, so we will now move to our commendations, and we will do our public comment after our commendations. So our first commendation for the night is our Intel Reading for Miles program. Carl Leppelman, our Chief Academic Officer, and Amanda Ball from Martin Luther King Junior Elementary, our lead librarian will present.
Good evening, President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. It is an exciting evening this evening. The month of March was a busy month for our librarians and our second graders. Before I get started, I'd like to thank Amanda Ball, our lead librarian. She has done a tremendous job working with the other librarians across the district, coordinate a major effort, really, when you start thinking about across all the elementary schools. I'd also like to thank Raquel Leon. She is the external affairs manager for Intel, and she was the person that spearheaded this idea. And let me give you a thought. 48 bicycles showing up at Intel to be assembled. So also a shout out goes to all those Intel employees that put those bikes together, and then our staff here that got them to the schools. And so the work that was done was pretty remarkable. And before Amanda gets started with her little presentation this evening, we wanted to make sure every student got recognized, because sometimes obviously certain students will read a lot of minutes. Is that right? We've had book challenges in the past. So librarians really took time to make sure we had little prizes to encourage students and all students to participate. So overall, if students read, they typically get better at reading. So there's some research to show that vocabulary develops the more you read. your fluency in reading. And so across the entire city, I would ask that all of us really join, and not just the students, but the adults, sit down and spend some time reading with your children. So I'll turn over to Amanda, and she has a little slideshow she'd like to present some great statistics.
Madam President and members of the board, the RRPS librarians would like to thank Intel not only for their donation of the 45 bikes that were awarded to our second graders throughout the district, but also for the donation of the books and fidgets that were used to recognize students throughout the month-long reading challenge and to encourage them to keep reading. With that being said, we'll go to the next slide. Our students read a total of 380,000 minutes, 454 minutes, sorry. In the month of March. So pretty impressive for all of our second graders throughout the district. So amazing. Here's our winners from Colinas del Norte Elementary School. They read a total of 32,529 minutes just at Colinas. Here's our winners from Cielo Azul Elementary School. They read a total of 16,051 minutes. Enchanted Hills Elementary School, reading 37,657 minutes. Ernie Stapleton Elementary, reading a total of 111,000 minutes, 349 minutes. Joe Harris Elementary School, reading 33,677 minutes. Maggie Cordova Elementary School, reading 13,892 minutes. Martin Luther King Elementary School, reading 46,540 minutes. Cuesta del Sol students read 8,231 minutes. Rio Rancho Elementary School read 12,389 minutes. Sandia Vista students read 13,125 minutes. And Spark Academy students read 4,994 minutes. Vista Grande students read 51,380 minutes. All right. And so we are so proud of all of our students who participated, and Intel, we thank them for bringing this idea to us and just supporting our students in their reading efforts.
Thank
As
you.
you can
thank you.
see, they got bikes.
I know.
That was the
That's
writing
amazing.
for
That was
miles,
the
yeah.
big deal, huh?
I know. I'm so grateful. We're just really lucky to have Intel in our community and all their willingness to help us. So we're so grateful. So thank you for everyone who put that together. Our next commendation is for the Enchroma colorblind correction glasses donation. Our presenter will be Jerry Reeder, our Executive Director of Special Services, and Ronald Neldon, the donor. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board, I'm excited to introduce Mr. Neldon, and then after that, we'll bring up the students. So Mr. Ronald Neldon is in partnership with Enchroma in donating 10 pairs of colorblind correction glasses to the students across Rio Rancho Public Schools. Mr. Neldon, a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, survived a terrorist truck bomb attack at Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia in June 1996. One of the airmen who went overseas with Mr. Neldon ended up having a son who had been born completely deaf. Ron started watching videos of children hearing for the first time with cochlear implants, which led to watching videos of people seeing color for the first time. Ron knew he had to help and decided he wanted to provide similar excitement for children who have never experienced color as they're meant to be. Mr. Neldon decided to donate Enchroma glasses to colorblind students. This year, with his own funds and donations, 10 students from 6 different schools were selected to receive a pair of Enchroma glasses. This is the second time Mr. Neldon has changed the lives of Rio Rancho Public School students. Mr. Neldon has plans to continue to brighten the Rio Rancho Public School students' lives in the future. So, an interesting story tonight. I was given a list of the students, and then I was told that the students in green were the ones that were selected. I'm colorblind myself, so the colors alternate red, green. So someone had to put a little line next to the names for me. So, Mr. Neldon, did you want to say anything before I call up the students?
No, I would just like to say, Madam President, Dr. Cleveland, thank you for allowing me to be here. I've got to thank Wyndham Kemsley and Jerry Reeder. They have been phenomenal. I understand it's taking time out of their workday to help me, but they've been very accommodating. I need to thank the people at Enchroma, thank my wife for her support on all this, as well as the friends, family, and coworkers, and fellow survivors of the attack that helped donate so we could increase the number. Hopefully next year, we can make it 10 to 15 pair of glasses for more kids to try to brighten their future, because it's never ending. And the looks on the kids' faces when they take them on and off, looking at pictures, I got goosebumps just talking about it. It's phenomenal, the reaction to the kids. So I appreciate you allowing me to be here.
Before you call them up, Ron, I just want to say thank you so much, not only for your service to our community, but also to our country. And thank you for all that you've done for us. And we're very, very grateful. Anyone on the board want to say?
Yeah, I agree. Concur. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. So I'll let you go ahead and.
Leonard, thank you for the support.
And as I mentioned earlier, we're really grateful for your generosity and your kindness to these students, and excited that you hope to continue to do this in the future. So again, thank you for being with us, and thank you for your kind heart.
It's my honor. In concert with Enchroma, what we're trying to do is make it a statewide awareness. And I don't tell people what happened through or, what I survived to glorify anything. It's to allow people to put a face to the stories they hear and to see that something positive can come out of something horrendous.
Yeah.
Life-changing. I always say it's it redefined my life. So I thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Madam President, do we?
When I call up the students, would you like them to stand behind me, or would you like them to come stand in front of you and face the audience?
Come up here and face.
Okay. Ruben Tiger Moreno, he's a sixth grader at Mountain View Middle School. Damian Hand, ninth grader at Cleveland High School. Seth McLaughlin, 11th grader at Cleveland High School. Giovanni Pacheco, 6th grader at Rancho Middle School. Not with us tonight, Antonio Lopez, he's a 10th grader at Cleveland High School. Kaylin Peterman, she's 11th grader at Rancho Cyber Academy. Tristan Culpepper, 6th grader, Mountain View Middle School. And I think he had to leave. Not with us tonight, Sebastian Green, 8th grader at Lincoln Middle School. Andres Reyes, 6th grader, Rio Rancho Middle School. And Emmanuel Armijo, 10th grader, Cleveland High School.
This is my wife, Patricia Nelson. We were childhood sweethearts. She broke up on me back in the 70s. 24 years of mutual stalking. She's been supportive beyond belief on this.
I'll kind of scoot in a little bit.
Yeah.
We got phoned up. I called my mom and my dad, and even though we weren't dating, I knew I had to let her know I was wrong.
I love it. I love it. Do you guys want us to stand up behind them, or should we go out? Okay, I'm like, we're just these little heads.
Big smiles, everybody. One more.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, students, for coming in. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Madam President,
Yeah, please.
can I make a motion
Yes.
to accept the Enchroma colorblind correction glasses donation?
Okay, we have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Jeff Morgan. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Motion carries 5-0. No, it was perfect. It was perfect. I know that everyone's walking out, but I just felt, when Ron was saying about his experience and those hard things that he went through, and then talking about making something positive out of it, I just thought that was so important for our community at this time. That's such a great thing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really wonderful to have the glasses, and you've had a family member with color blindness, which I have. It provides all kinds of interesting situations, during life sometimes for you. And so it's great that they're going to have this opportunity.
Yeah,
So,
that's wonderful. I wanted to pull one of our students up and ask them about their experience, but no. But I didn't want to put them on the spot. So I decided not to do that. So thank you. Okay, we'll now go to our public comment portion of our meeting. So first off, I'd like to go through our online public comment. We have 5 that we received online, and we have 1 that's in person in the boardroom tonight with us. So first, let me go through these, the ones that we received online. So as I said, we received 4. I'm just recounting them. Our first one is from Alicia Heinrichs. She's against elementary school going early and is asking us to not follow the APS start time schedule. We have another from Haley Stevens, who would like for us to have no school on Wednesday at all, with the changes that are happening on Wednesday. Leo Fenton does not like the district getting rid of our early Wednesday dismissal. Gabby De La O does not agree with adding days and hours to the school year. And then our last came in from Paula Renton. She's a member of our 6th grade materials adoption committee, and she wanted to make it known that she recommends the material Savvis My World Interactive, and that it's been thoroughly vetted by the committee, and recommends the material to receive unanimous approval, has received unanimous approval from the 6th grade members of the adoption committee. Okay, so with that, I apologize for shuffling my papers. So for our in-person public comment, once again, the board reserves the right to limit, curtail repetitive comments or other expressions that are obscene, profane, disruptive of the orderly conduct of the board's meeting. Anything harassing or defamatory or not keeping in with the decorum of the school board meeting, we will ask and give a warning and ask for those comments not to come out. You have 3 minutes. 3 minutes. We will have a timer that will go off in 3 minutes for our public comment in the boardroom. So for our first public comment, and our only actual public comment in the boardroom tonight, is from, and I apologize if I say your last name wrong, but it's Tara Bernheisel, and you're welcome to come up to the podium at this time. And I also want to say, I think sometimes when we have public comment, we cannot comment back to members who are giving public comment.
Okay. Sorry, I was going to say good morning. Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. My name is Tara, and I have 3 children who attend Rio Rancho Public Schools. On April 11th, we have a custody order in place that has been followed. And on April 11th, the school created quite a scene. And what I see on the state statutes for false imprisonment, I feel that my kids were held against their will after they expressed safety concerns with the other parent. I expressed these safety concerns at I believe like 7:30 in the morning before my children arrived at school. That day, on April 11th, I was not allowed to even enter the building, and I had to make my way in there. And just a disaster happened. After that, I was basically falsely accused of a whole bunch of things. And I would just like to say that I would like these schools to have more training when it comes to children expressing their safety concerns, whether it be at school or at home, and to be taken more seriously. And that is it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're always grateful for our public comment, whether it comes in through our public comment form or also here in person in the boardroom. I think since we've come back from COVID, we don't have as many that come in, and so we're always grateful to receive those. And so thank you for coming in tonight. Okay, we'll now go to our reports. Our first report is on the Boys and Girls Club presentation. Renee Saucedo, our secondary school improvement officer, along with Colby Wilson, chief encouragement, that is a great thing to say, chief encouragement officer from the Boys and Girls Club of New Mexico, and Marginal Vigil from the Sandoval area director, Boys and Girls Club of New Mexico, will present.
Madam President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board, I'm happy to be here this evening to introduce you to Colby Wilson, CEO of Boys and Girls Club, also Christian Naea, who's the executive vice president, and Marginal Vigil to give you an update on what they've been doing with the afternoon program for Boys and Girls Club at middle school that at the very beginning of the year we started talking about. So we're all excited to hear how it's been going.
Thank you, Renee, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to spend a little time tonight to talk to you about our program. My name is Colby Wilson, Chief Encouragement Officer for the Boys and Girls Clubs. Before we get into the details of our middle school program, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about how we got here, some of the history of the club, and give you a little background on our organization. Our mission is to enable all young people, especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential as productive, caring, responsible citizens. And as you know, we've been in the community many years, since the early 90s when we opened the facility over on Sunt. And it's really with that mission statement that we made the decision to recently sell our facility. So when we talk about those who need us most, that's the question that we're always asking ourselves in every community that we serve. When I arrived here about 4 years ago, Dr. Cleveland met with me and we asked each other that question. Who are those kids in this community that need us the most? The SAFE program was operating in all the elementary schools. We were duplicating that service by driving around to some of those elementary schools, picking up 2 or 3 kids when there was already a program on site at the school. So that was not necessarily meeting the need, right? We were just duplicating and competing. So Dr. Cleveland and I talked about middle school and how that group was pretty underserved when it came to after school and summer programs. So as we, then COVID happened, things we actually served youth in our facility while the schools were closed, and kids could come to our facility and attend school virtually. So we did some great work there, helping kids stay on track during the pandemic. But it became clear that that facility was not the best strategy anymore. So we came up with this plan to look at programming in the middle schools, go to where the kids are, try not to, bring all the middle schoolers to that facility. The location wasn't great. Transportation was an issue. So that's how we ended up here where we are. We've sold the facility. We are, I think, working together better when it comes to this partnership, and we're aligned in, our vision of who those kids are that need us the most. And so I'm just really excited about this program. I'm excited to introduce Christian Naea, who's our VP of Operations, who will give you some details on it. But I also wanted to recognize Renee and our area director, Marginal Vigil, who have worked together closely this past year, putting this program together. And I think you're gonna be impressed with some of the information you hear. So Christian, you're next.
Thank you, Colby. Superintendent, members of the board. Next slide, please. So we'll just quickly go through this. We're going to go through the introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about registration and attendance data, do some program highlights, And then we have some great improvement data, academic success that we've achieved this past year at your schools. And then I'm actually going to invite up 2 of our members to speak and talk about their experiences at the Boys and Girls Club. And then we'll open it up for a Q&A session. Next slide, please. So time frame, what we're looking at is our current school year, the 2022-2023 school year. And initially we were open or serving a program at Eagle Ridge Middle School, Lincoln Middle School, and Mountain View Middle School. So first I'd like to share registration and attendance data, followed by measured maintenance of a maintenance, meaning they maintain a passing grade throughout the year, and then improvement in language arts, meaning that we did see a grade letter improvement from first quarter to third quarter. Next slide, please. So right now at Eagle Ridge, which we recently closed, but we're going to be moving that program over to Rio Rancho Middle School next year. We had a registered members of 33 and an average daily attendance of 8. At Lincoln Middle School, we had registered members 70, but an average daily attendance of 15. And then at Mountain View, we had registered members 72 and average daily attendance of 14. Next slide, please. So program highlights. One program I wanted to share with you is we are really big at STEM at our program. So as you can see from the pictures, we had a few days where we were able to bring in 3D printing art that we did as an activity for the kids, and they really had a lot of fun doing that. Next slide. So what I really wanted to get at, and the meat of it, is our academic success, right? Tracking the data. So what we did is we had a sample size of 41 youth. Now, these are the 41 kids who are coming to our program more than 3 times a week, 3 or more times a week. So as I said earlier, what we were tracking was, did they maintain a passing grade from first quarter to third quarter? And we're happy to report that in language arts, we had a goal of 75% maintaining a passing grade. Our outcome was 82% maintained a passing grade. And we also wanted to see an improvement in grades as well, right? We wanted to see kids who go up a letter grade. And our goal was 50% of the kids who come to the program are going to go up a letter grade. Now, we went above and beyond that, where 72% of the kids who attended our program saw an increase in a letter grade for language arts. And then when we come to math, a maintenance goal to 75, 91% of our members who came to our program maintained a passing grade for the year, and 81% saw an improvement of a letter grade for academics. And we just want to thank our staff for doing that, because they have worked hard throughout the year. One of our highlighted programs is Power Hour. So when the kids sign in, when they get there right after school, they go straight into homework help and tutoring. Next slide. But don't take my word for it. I'd like to invite up Bryson and Bentley, who are going to talk to you all about their experiences at the Boys and Girls Club.
Hi, my name is Bentley, and I go to the Boys and Girls Club. I have been attending the club for about a year. I like coming to the club. It's fun, cool, and very kind. My favorite staff member is Miss Lacey, because she's sweet, kind, energetic, and fun. My favorite memory of the club is when it was Miguel's last day. We played football. It was fun. I really enjoyed playing with Miguel. The club is really helpful with homework. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day. Hi, my name is Bryson DeFino, and I go to the Boys and Girls Club at Lincoln Middle School. I've been attending the club for 1 year now. I like going to the club because the staff are very wonderful and helpful. Some examples are like homework and how to understand the activities. My favorite member now is Miss Lacey, because she has been at the club for a little while, and she is a very wonderful staff. My favorite memory is when I went to legislative with Mr. Miguel, and I went to the Roundhouse and met the representatives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, boys. And next slide. And so some of the key takeaways we want to just bring up is that youth who attend our program really are seeing an increase in academic success. And then our other key takeaway is that we definitely need to up our recruitment efforts, because we could be serving a lot more kids. And as you can see from the data we just presented, we really do make an impact on the youth we serve. Next slide. And I just want to hand it back over to our CEO, Colby, to end the presentation.
Thank you, Christian. And I just wanted to wrap up with a little bit of, vision and talk about, our goal is to grow this program and find ways to sustain it year after year. Believe there's potential partnership opportunities and, how we work with facilities and potentially new facilities down the road. And it all starts with this type of partnership, right? And having the impact that you saw here tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to meet with our middle school principals and talk about, okay, what can we do right now to get started on next year, really start promoting what we're doing in the middle schools, encouraging kids to come. The attendance data you see is another example of, I think, that those who need us most, right? Middle schoolers, they're experiencing that first taste of freedom. Parents will give them the choice of what they want to do after school. And so we have to battle what's out there as far as freedom and the things that are at home to get those kids to make that choice. And we're going to be successful. We've got the expertise in that area, and we look forward to building that attendance next year. Any questions?
My very first job was working at the Boys and Girls Club over on Cent. And so
Very cool.
in the 90s. And
Wow,
so
that's quite a
not funny,
coincidence.
but and it's just been wonderful. I'm just really grateful that you're looking for new and innovative ways to keep that program running. I know as we go in through the times that, some of those things change and how we want to present those programs. And so I think this is a wonderful thing for our community. Someone the other day was just saying to me that, they sold the Boys and Girls Club. And I said, no, they're in our middle schools now. They're in our middle schools. And so thank you for being in our middle schools. And thank you also for having your evaluation, that you could see from the beginning what you wanted your outcomes to be so that we could see those tonight. So thank you for that. Board, go ahead, Gary Tripp.
I want to say thank you. It's an honor just to listen to this, and I just appreciate the Boys and Girls Club so much. I guess I'd like to challenge you because I saw that Eagle Ridge may not be on the map, and I saw the numbers were low.
Yeah.
That might be the biggest need. So if you would kindly, with all the great work you just presented, keep thinking of maybe how those numbers can get up, maybe don't get away from them. And I'm a baseball fan, so I'd like you to hit a grand slam with all 4 middle schools. Gosh, I just really, truly from the bottom of my heart appreciate it. And it's fantastic. And I'm going to pray for Eagle Ridge Middle School and hope that maybe something can be done to get those numbers up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks for the work that you're doing. Job well done with the young man. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Jessica?
Yeah, just to echo what President Galbraith said about, I love the idea of having the programs in the schools themselves. I know one of the biggest challenges to access to programs like this is transportation. So I think it's great that we have these programs offered at our middle schools. And thank you for the report and all the great work you guys are doing. We're excited to have you with us.
I wanted to ask you if you knew what the use of the building is now. My boys used to play basketball there and really enjoyed it. So,
Well, we sold it to a landscaping company, so they're using the gym mostly for storing their large landscaping vehicles. So it's a private business now.
Yeah.
I mopped that floor many times.
It's still the same floor.
Dr. Caitlin, do you want to add anything?
I just want to say thank you. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. And we really do need to grow this program. And as we look at new schedules next year, we have to think about some time shifts. But this is, to parents and students, this is a wonderful place. They do really fun things, and it's safe and it's productive. And so we do need to spread the word and try to get our enrollment up, because it's a great opportunity for middle school students. And we don't have enough for students at that age in our community, and this would help fill that gap. So I hope we can, by word of mouth, really encourage people to consider this program. One of the challenges, it came a little late, and some parents had already made plans. And so hopefully this year we'll be a little bit ahead of the curve and hope to see those numbers go up. But it did make a difference for those kids who did come, and we very much appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate your support.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we'll move to our next report, which is going to be the committee recommendations for fine arts and social studies instructional materials. Before we get into this, I noticed that we haven't, and I'm sorry I didn't see this sooner, but we have discussion action on this, and then we also have an action later in that. So should we just discuss now and then we'll do action?
I think, yeah, that was just an
Yeah,
error.
that's what I
It's the
thought, too.
Discussion now and a vote
Yeah.
later.
Okay, so we'll just have our discussion now. And so we'll invite Kurt Schmidt, our Executive Director of Fine Arts, up. Following him, we'll have Todd Rush will also address us and Erica Lozano with our secondary instructional for social studies. Sorry, I'm totally tongue-tied, but it's because there's so much in there. Thank you.
President Galbraith. Oh. Is it? Okay. President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, I'm here tonight to talk about fine arts adoption materials, or materials adoption for the coming years. If we could advance, keep going. One more and one more. There we go. So first of all, when we talk about fine arts adoption, we're not talking about one area. We're talking about dance, drama, music, and visual arts. But that's not the end of it. Among those four, there are further divisions. We've got elementary school, middle school, high school, and further yet, we have divisions in for instance, music is band, choir, orchestra, guitar, and high school art would be introduction to visual art, photography, drawing and painting, pottery and sculpture. So there are a lot of different areas we're adopting. So all told, it's 13 areas. And as you see on the slide, under K8, it's 7 different areas. And from 9 to 12, it's 6 different areas. So 13 total. Sorry if you have fear of the number 13, but it's 13 areas for adoption. So a lot of different variety and runs the gamut from K-12. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, the fine arts programs operate under the New Mexico Core Art Standards, but they're guided by the district's exit standards. We don't have curricula for every different discipline. But rather, we have these exit standards that we want kids at different grade levels to know and be able to do certain things at different grade levels. So and that's because there's so much variety in our teaching and our learning. For instance, an elementary music teacher might be a Kodai specialist, might be a music learning theory specialist. Another person might be an ORF instrument specialist. So how those teachers achieve those exit standards is up to the creativity and their passion for learning at all different levels. So how they get to those exit standards is up to their, as I said, their own creativity. But again, they're held to those exit standards. So by the end of, let's say, 5th grade, all arts students at the elementary level are going to have, or the goal is to have them have achieved those exit standards. So there's not a curriculum per se, but there are exit standards. So with that said, you're going to see a lot of variation in the materials that have been adopted or being requested to be adopted. So next slide, please. So the process was that all 64 fine arts teachers in the district through their PLCs were engaged in this work. All teachers' voices were heard. So it wasn't a sampling. It was every single fine arts teacher being engaged. That's possible because we have smaller numbers than other areas. So they met together. There was consensus. There was agreement. All teachers' needs were met, and for their students too. So I just want to make sure you understand that all teachers were involved in this work. And again, you'll see that variation in the adoption materials. Next slide, please. So our process was the first semester we met in the week. The work was done in monthly PLCs that are conducted, and also during the professional development days throughout the year. Those groups would meet. They would review the current materials, assess the future needs and growth especially, and then review possible materials for adoption. That went on for the whole first semester. Second semester, they finalized those materials, had their final discussions, submitted the materials to me in March. We had a public open house on April 12th where the public could come in and give comment on the materials. And that was our process. Next slide, please. So commenting on this, I've mentioned variation a lot. So you'll see vast differences in the materials being adopted or being requested. You'll see vast differences in the amounts of money for each one. But I want to assure you that no teacher's needs are going undone or unmet. Whatever the teachers needed, they put down on there, but it's going to vary from group to group, even within a content area. So not all the elementary music teachers, for instance, adopted entirely the same program, but there were slight differences. So you'll see vast differences in prices and materials. But again, I want to assure you that all teachers' voices were heard and that the materials are appropriate for each teacher and their students. And then, sorry, back up one more. And also, as we go through all these processes, all these adoptions after every cycle, we are making the move to more online materials. And that's just the nature of the beast, I think, lately. And it's wonderful because those online materials can be edited and we don't have to buy new textual material. And so, next slide. Sorry, back up one more. I'm sorry, go on forward. I'm lost. So you'll see here the final totals. And again, they're vastly different, but again, there were some needs. Dance decided not to adopt any materials. It runs the gamut from them they're not requesting anything to others who are requesting quite a bit. And some of the large numbers are because of online subscriptions, 6 or 7 year subscriptions for multiple teachers over the course of the years. So the total comes out to $307,932 for the adoptions. And next slide, questions. I will be glad to answer any questions you might have.
We have any questions? Jessica Tyler, any questions? Noreen Scott? Gary Tripp?
I have one question, Kurt. Did you have a budget going in and did you stay within that budget? When you look at the 307,000,
I thought it was going to be about half that, to be honest. But with, again, moving to more online materials, that was where most of the expense occurred. It was because of those subscriptions to the online materials. But I think in essence, we save money because those materials can be edited year after year. And also we're not adopting something for a certain amount of money that becomes out of date in 2 or 3 years. Those, I think the online materials they've chosen are organic and can change with the times, and they're always being uploaded with new lesson plans, et cetera. So I think it seems to be double what I budgeted. But again, I think those materials are much more appropriate and adaptable.
So I do have a second question. Most of our teachers, because they're the ones that made the decisions, which is great, they're pretty stable, right? We don't see a turnover of fine arts teachers.
No. In fact, I believe some of these materials, for instance, the subscriptions can be transferred if there is a change.
Okay.
So, and it's a consent for some of the materials. It's a consensus among the PLC. But to answer your first question, there's great stability in the teachers. Last year it was kind of a fluke. We saw about a 15% turnover, not for anything bad, but because of retirements and people moving out of the state. But it's fairly stable from year to year.
Thank you.
Jeffrey
I just have one question. Is there still time to review some of the information?
We're going to adopt tonight.
I'm sorry?
We're going to adopt it tonight, or not adopt it, yeah.
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
So we're going to take action tonight on the adoption of the materials. Yeah.
No, I want.
But you can still look at them after.
Okay, that's what I was.
Well, sure. We could set up an appointment where we could review if there are any specific ones. Yeah. Again, they're online, so we could chat and we could get an appointment where we could see some of the things.
Yeah, I'm curious. So which I am a champion of the elementary schools, their program with music and such. But what's driving that one up so much higher than the others? I'm just curious.
As I said, it's the subscriptions. Okay. And it's not it's a subscription for 13 teachers over 7 years.
Okay.
So that would do it. And I realize the discrepancy there among disciplines, but it's again, I stress all teachers. No teachers are feeling like they're being left out of from the adoption. They're putting it down there exactly what they need.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's good. I was just curious. So, Dr. Cleveland, do you have?
Well, just to comment about just thanks to all the people who served on the committee. As you said, it's been going on since fall, and it's been a long process, and people gave a lot of their own time to support this process. So to everyone who served on your committee and to your leadership as well, we thank everyone for the time in investing in looking at all of these materials and making a recommendation.
And I will pass that on to the teachers.
Yeah, please do. Any other questions or comments? So we'll adopt this shortly. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank them for me too. You know, we're going to have Erica and Todd get up here in just a second, but as I worked with them and I had books all over my house, I can only imagine, you know, as they were going through all the materials and what they were looking at and taking time to do that. And so we're really grateful for them taking that time to do that and for you putting this together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now invite Todd Rush and Erica Lozano to come up and talk about our social studies instructional materials.
Good evening, Board President Galbraith, Superintendent Cleveland, members of the board. This is an exciting moment for our secondary curriculum and instruction team. This is a culmination of almost an entire school year and tremendous and thorough facilitation and organization by Mrs. Erica Lozano, who is the coordinator for ELA and social studies. Erica took on the challenging task this year of the instructional materials adoption for social studies, in addition to the preparation for the standards realignment and the content as well. So I'd like to take this moment to just recognize her and allow her time to share with you the process of the instructional material adoption for secondary in social studies.
Thank you, Todd. Good evening, President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. Thank you so much for having me this evening. Our presentation this evening is going to deviate a little bit from what would be a typical review of the instructional materials adoption process because, just like Mr. Esch said, we're in a unique year where we're looking at new standards and new instructional resources. And so I want to take a moment to paint the picture of what that process has looked like and why that's so important this year and moving forward. So I'm not going to go over this graphic in detail, but I do want to start by talking about and bringing to the forefront what I think we've talked about before in this room, but that is that our instructional materials, while incredibly important, are not the only driving factor in our classroom. Our content standards are really the driving force behind the curriculum that of documents that really guide our teachers and our teaching teams to ensure that our curriculum is not only guaranteed so that all of the standards are taught in a single year, but that it is viable and that we have a plan in place to make sure that we have the time to teach those standards. At the very bottom, you see those high quality instructional materials, and those are highlighted. That's what we're going to highlight tonight, but they are just a piece of the puzzle that paints the picture of what happens in our classrooms. More important than anything else, though, and I think Todd Rush, he mentions this all the time, that there's two really critical things in education. One of them is the high quality instructional materials that we adopt and that we use, and more important than anything else are our high quality teachers. And so I want to take a moment to recognize that above all else, that's our greatest resource. Their content knowledge, their professional expertise, and their teaching style really has the greatest impact on our classrooms. So this is a timeline, and I'm going to go to my page here so I can read it. This is a timeline, and like I said at the beginning, I really wanted to share with you kind of where we've been and where we're going. But these are some important dates and events of note in regards to social studies in our state and in our district, really for the last several years. So taking it back to 2009, that's the last time that we had a revision of our standards at the state level for social studies. 2016 was the last opportunity that we had to review instructional materials and to adopt instructional materials. At the time, due to funding restrictions, we only updated our advanced placement materials, and that largely has to do with requirements from College Board. And so the department really shifted focus to the development of curriculum through open education resources. And our teaching teams have been using their expertise since that time to really build curriculum maps and work at the PLC level to have common assessments and to engage their students in the curriculum. However, they have not had aligned high quality instructional materials that are up to date for likely close to or over 10 years now. 2019 is when our state began the process to review and revise our state standards, our state content standards for social studies. And then we were charged with, through this last school year, of reviewing those standards, studying them, and getting ready to implement them. And so that is what our process has been for this last year in conjunction with the review of materials. And I am excited to say that we're ready. We're ready to take the next step forward. Our big question, though, at the end of last year was, how do we effectively deepen our understanding of the new standards for social studies while also engaging in the adoption process for instructional resources in the same year? Typically, we would take an entire school year just to do that second piece, to review and evaluate those options for instructional resources. But we kind of had to do both in the same year. And we actually had a team of teachers who came forward at the start of this school year and really petitioned for taking a step back from the review process and really coming to understand not only our new standards, but also our instructional shifts for social studies before moving into the review of materials. They really had the foresight to say we want our standards to come first, which is in alignment with our guaranteed and viable curriculum. And so we did just that. And the next slide will give you an overview of what that looks like. So we focused on, during first semester, we did that deep dive into the standards. We engaged staff and the committee at the PLC level and really looked at not only what the new standards mean and what we're meant to cover and engage students with in the classroom, but also how we go about doing that. And then we engaged our community through our monthly lunch and learns, which were our content connection sessions. And those sessions, the topics for them really followed the same pattern of work of the committee itself. And then this last semester, we really jumped into the evaluation of instructional materials. Again, we engaged the committee in this work. We engaged all teachers at the PLC level. So our committee acted as liaisons and they took that information back to their PLCs, and then they brought back feedback to our next meeting. We also engaged the community through, again, those content connection sessions that were held monthly, again, following the same process as the committee, so that our community was able to get a glimpse into what that process looked like. The community had an opportunity to engage through chat to pose questions. We did have our both a virtual option for open house and an in-person. We had what we thought was a great turnout. We had 36 parents who came and joined us to provide some feedback. And then we also engaged students through this process, and I'll share some of that information with you in just a moment. I want to take a moment, though, before I really start introducing to you what materials we are recommending this evening. I'd like to take a moment to not only recognize, but congratulate our committee. They really are the ones who deserve the recognition for this work. So here's our middle school team. And we were fortunate enough to have President Galbraith with us. She joined our 8th grade team, and we had just incredible conversations, and it was wonderful to get her input and feedback as well. And then if we go to the next slide, this is our high school committee. And the groups, just so you know, we did have to break up the committee into 4 groups just to make sure that we didn't burden our schools too much on any given day with the number of subs. So we did not ever have all of middle school or all of high school together, with the exception of some of our opportunities to vote. But we were able to come together into 4 distinct groups, which actually worked out really well. It was a little bit more intimate of a setting, which allowed for some really rich content and standards-based conversations. And then President Galbraith, I don't know how she did it, because I know she has a super packed schedule, but she also joined us and joined the 11th grade U.S. history group as well. So she's got a good broad perspective of U.S. history at both the middle school and the high school level. And then we had our advanced placement team. This process for adopting new AP books is a little more straightforward. Basically comes down to what book addresses the course at a glance that College Board publishes and what books are recommended by College Board. And so these committees met just on one day. They reviewed all resources. They made sure the resources were aligned because ultimately the end goal of those courses is to pass that AP exam. So we are excited about the new options that we have for our AP courses in social studies. So I'm going to come back to that graphic that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. Again, I'm not going to go over this in depth, but this just paints another picture of what the progression of work looks like. So anything that you see in that kind of Rio Rancho Public Schools orangey red color is what we did in the fall. Anything in that golden color is what we worked on as a committee in the spring. And then anything in blue is what we're moving forward with as we go into the next school year. So a lot of that work is already done. We're in the process of doing it. I meet with our middle school curriculum team tomorrow, and we're really excited to continue building our pacing calendar and identifying some common assessments and putting together those really useful resources for teachers and PLCs so that they can plan their instruction and ensure that alignment across the district. And then I wanted to highlight a really unique piece of our social studies standards, and that is our instructional shifts. So these come from the New Mexico Public Education Department. And the way we talked about it as a committee is that we have our standards, which are kind of that trunk of the tree. They're the core of what we do. They're the strength of what we see above ground. And then the leaves that are coming off of the branches, the kind of beauty of the tree are our instructional best practices, our teaching strategies, and our instructional materials. And those come from our teachers and the resources that we use in the classroom. The instructional shifts, though, and there are only 5 of them, are really the roots of the work that we do. And so they lay that foundation and they really keep us grounded in all things that we do. And so as we go through the next 6 years, the instructional shifts will really be the core of our professional learning. And you can see them listed there. They are, I think, something that as we looked at them as a committee, when we first read them, we thought, what does this look like? How do we do this in the classroom? And so over the course of the last year, we've really taken time to start thinking about how do we roll this out in an intentional way so that teachers do not feel overburdened and overwhelmed in year 1 of this adoption cycle? And we know we have a lot of work to do, but we really want to take our time in making sure that we roll out these shifts in a very intentional and strategic way so that teachers feel supported and students feel successful in the classroom. This is just an overview of our process for evaluating instructional materials. It falls in alignment with what many other contents do. So we started with that New Mexico Public Education Department approved list. And I will say we did that for most of our subjects. New Mexico history for 7th and 9th grade, the options are kind of few and far between. And so we branched out a bit there. But aside from that, we started with the list from the Public Education Department. And then we selected our rubric. So our rubric comes from Inquire Ed. And you can see the domains of that rubric listed there. So every instructional resource was evaluated per the rubric. I will say it's an incredibly rigorous rubric. And we were happy to be able to review the resources with such a critical eye. And then finally, we continued that process throughout our evaluation of getting that feedback, not only from our Rio Rancho Public Schools staff, but also from the community. So here's that overview of community input. Again, we had the content connection sessions. There were 7 sessions total. The last one will be on Wednesday, May 10th, and that's our open Q&A forum that will again be held online from 12 to 1 on the Rio Rancho Public Schools YouTube channel. We have about 5 to 10 attendees per session, although when we look at the number of views afterward, we are seeing that there are some more folks who are viewing it, viewing the recording as opposed to the live session. We had our community open house on March 8th. And we had 36 staff and community members attend the in-person session. I was really excited to see so many of our parents and community members not just come in and take a quick look, but many stayed for over an hour and really looked resource to resource, because I think we did a good job this year of communicating that you might have a kiddo going into 7th grade next year, but that student is going to use these resources for really the duration of their time in Rio Rancho Public Schools. So parents were looking not only at next year's resources, but the resources that their child will be engaged with in years to come. And then on February 3rd, we did a student review activity. We utilized one of our ELTP days. We had a huge turnout, and I got to give a lot of credit to our teachers for really kind of talking students through this and encouraging them to complete the activity. But we had over 1,100 students that responded. And their responses were vast and varied. Some of them focused on the more aesthetic pieces of the curriculum. Others were able to log in, and they talked about whether the text was too easy or too hard, or they liked the graphics, they liked the activities within. And so that real, raw, authentic feedback from our students was really helpful to our committee. So now I'd like to present to you the materials that we are recommending for adoption this evening. In middle school, and I'm gonna talk through these, I guess in respect to publishers, because I feel like that's the easiest way to explain the differences. So at the middle school level, the committee voted for and is recommending for 6th grade and 8th grade, the option that we reviewed from Savvis Learning Company. And then in 7th grade, the New Mexico Journey comes from Gibbs Smith Education. We have used the 7th grade text before, but the old edition. So this is the updated edition with some updated resources that our committee has found helpful and that they're excited to use moving into the next school year. And if we can go to high school. So these are the high school recommendations. 9th grade geography and 12th grade economics both come from McGraw-Hill Education. We have 10th and 11th grade and then 12th grade government that also come from Savvis Learning Company. And then for 9th grade New Mexico history, we will be using a digital only text written by Dr. Brandon Morgan that comes out of CNM. And so this is just an overview. I'm happy to answer questions if you have questions about these specifically, but I hope that it provides you a picture of what it is that we're recommending. I'm going to talk in a moment about what we get with each of these so that you understand what kind of materials and resources students have and how they can access the content. And then these are the advanced placement texts that our committee selected. You'll notice on all 3 levels that we do not have a common publisher, 6th through 12th grade, or a common publisher for all of our advanced placement courses. We had a lot of discussion about this at the beginning of our process, but what it comes down to really is that we want the best resources possible for each of the disciplines within social studies. And so sometimes you will see that a publisher is further ahead in what they've published and the resources that they offer in some disciplines of social studies, but not others. And so we felt like we were limiting our teachers and limiting our students if we were to have said from the beginning, across the board, everybody has to pick the same thing or everybody has to go with the same publisher. There are some districts that do that, and I believe that it does work in other content areas. It's something that when I did middle school English last year, that was critical. We didn't want our students moving from publisher to publisher all 3 years of middle school, but for social studies, the committee felt it was very important to be able to select the best resource for each discipline, and AP felt the same. We have just 3 supplemental resources that we are also recommending. They are largely related to 7th grade New Mexico history and then also middle school as a whole. So as I mentioned earlier, New Mexico history, the resources that we have available to us in terms of formal published texts that are recommended by the New Mexico Public Education Department are few and far between. And so the resources that you see here are just to fill in some of the gaps that we have and to bring in some of those other perspectives. That is not to say that our work is done with these resources, especially for 7th grade and with all of our disciplines. As we continue to move toward those shifts that I reviewed with you earlier, bringing in multiple perspectives to our curriculum is critical. And so we'll continue to pursue other resources and and even other instructional strategies to support that. The issue is, that's the formal title, The Issue, is a middle school publication, and it really focuses on helping students to analyze kind of some of those hot topics in the world today through a social studies lens. Our teachers previewed them with students, previewed them with our PLCs, and they absolutely love them. Will be, if they are approved, we will be looking to see which articles match best with our units of study so that we can have that alignment across the board and engage students in some of these really engaging materials that you see. So this is just a graphic of what's included in the resources that I just showed you. AP is a little bit different. I want to note that these are specifically for our core resources. AP, what's most important is that every student has their own book. And so we ensure that a teacher has a copy of the book, whether it's a separate teacher edition or whether the teacher just has the book that the students have. And then all of the students will have their own printed copy as well as access to online materials. All of our resources, with the exception of that 9th grade CNM text that I mentioned, have everything that you see here. So our teachers will receive a teacher edition. All students will receive an actual student edition of the text. Each student will receive a consumable for the next 6 years, so teachers aren't having to try and preserve them. And then we've also worked with publishers to include in our quote access digitally to the online content for the next 6 years. This is the total of the budget, including advanced placement. And then finally, before I open for questions, I just wanted to leave us with one final thought. History cannot give us a program for the future, but it can give us a fuller understanding of ourselves and of our common humanity so that we can better face the future. And I think as we engage in this work as a social studies department, I feel like this is exactly what we focus on in any content. We are preparing our students for the future. We are preparing them to lead our community and our society in the future. And that's no different as we look at social studies. So I thank you for your time this evening, and I'll stand for questions if you have any.
Okay. Dr. Cleveland, did you want to add anything before we go to the board?
Well, just a couple of comments. Again, as you look back through, there was extensive teacher input into this process. And so our teachers had a really good opportunity to look through all of that. I do, applaud the effort that allowed people to come in from the community and look at the materials as well. But what I thought was most interesting is the students and asking them what they thought of these materials and which ones they thought would be more engaging for them. And so I think it was a very thorough process. And I know that it took hours and hours of work. I thank everybody on the committee for the time they gave to helping get these materials. As I said earlier, we have to live with these materials for a while. And you look at the total figure, it is a huge financial investment. So it is important that we go through a really systematic process to be sure that we have gotten the best materials that are available to us. And it appears that you have worked very hard to do that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to add to Dr. Cleveland's comments before we go to more comments and questions from the board. Just the hard work that went into this. And you saw all those committees, and Erica, it was actually amazing to see how she understood and knew each of those and the publisher she had talked to and all of those things. I don't think I could keep all of that straight with all the committees that she had. It was very impressive. But then for the teachers, as they went through those books, and I sat with them as they would go through them, and they would think about the learners and every type of student that they had, and they had different teachers who represented different groups of, students who had different learning abilities. And it was very impressive for them to think about this would not work for my student. And let me tell you why this won't work for my student. Or for a new teacher, this would be really hard, but this would be a great resource for a new teacher. And so I really, really appreciated just the thorough, in-depth discussion that, at least in the two committees that I was in, that they really, really looked deep into these books and made sure that they did those state standards, but also that they would fulfill the needs of our district. And so truly, they did a really, really wonderful job as they went through the materials. So we'll go for questions. Jessica Tyler, any questions or comments?
No questions. Just thank you for all the hard work. And I know that our teachers are extremely busy and that it takes a lot of time for them to go over the materials. And so I just appreciate everybody's hard work and great presentation on the materials. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for a great presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Tripp?
I guess I'll be a little long-winded. I'm sorry. But I know that this is a pretty controversial topic in our country today. And I love the instructional shifts, especially the roots, especially the empowering students to develop agency and pride in their identity. And so I looked up Brandon Morgan's description of his book in New Mexico history. I was fortunate enough to teach every single one of these subjects except for AP classes. And it talks about the work invites readers to explore New Mexico's variety and often conflicting history. And I think it's important that the committee seems to have done great work in the fact that we're not going to shy away from our history, because the fact is, I was hoping you would put the quote up that said, every contribution made by, we better study our history or we're going to be doomed to repeat it. I think my goal to all the teachers is keep up the great work, and like Dolores Huerta said, si puedes, yes, you can, and expand those minds. Every group, every race, every culture, every group has contributed to make this country great, and we need to make sure that we highlight every entity that's out there. So thank you for the hard work.
Thank you, board member.
I just want to say thanks for the hard work. Appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job. Appreciate it. Okay. We will now go to approve the consent agenda.
This is Noreen Scott. I move to approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Okay. We have a motion by Noreen Scott and a second by Jeff Morgan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, so now it gets kind of funny because I guess we'll come back up as we go through it too. We don't necessarily have to, since we just went through all those things. But now we're going to consider the approval of the committee recommendation for social studies instructional materials. Any further comments or questions on this? Okay.
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to approve the committee recommendation for the social studies instructional materials.
This is Noreen Scott. I second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Noreen Scott. And can we take a roll call vote on this, please?
Roll call vote. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
That's 5-0.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you. Yes, please.
Just a comment again to President Galbraith for serving on the committee. Appreciate her time. Now, any board member that would like to sit on one of those committees, they'll kind of learn the process and see. You're very welcome to do that, since we don't have a quorum, of course. But that's an open invitation, and I know they very much appreciated having you on the committee. And it does give you an understanding of the comprehensiveness. It is a big investment dollar-wise, and so and a lot of times there are perhaps some issues or controversies, but when you have a process as solid as this one, most of that goes away, because there's transparency, there's opportunity for people to have input, and everybody knows what that process is and the guidelines and everything. So a job really well done, and but that is an open invitation to board members who might want to serve in the future.
Yeah, I would say, I think when I first came on, I don't know if anyone knew what to do with the president of the board being in there, but it was honestly wonderful. And it was a great opportunity too, for me, just to be around the teachers and just to see how things work and understand, their positions. I really, really enjoyed it. So thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Okay, we'll now go to consider the approval of committee recommendation for the adoption of fine arts. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay.
Madam President, this is Board Member Gary Tripp. I'll make a motion that we approve the fine arts adoption.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Gary Tripp and a second by Jeff Morgan. And can you take a roll call vote for us, please?
Roll call vote. Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Tripp.
Yes.
Board Member Tyler.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
And the call is 5-0.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, that's exciting. And I feel like we need like this big hoo-ha because it was such a big deal. And so I just once again want to thank both our fine arts and our social studies and any teachers that are watching or who are here tonight. We're just really, really grateful for all the hard work that you do in our schools. You really make our schools. So thank you.
I bet it feels like a celebration to Erica and Todd.
I know. I feel like we got to get the cake out, and so thank you. Okay, our next item is to consider the adoption of priorities for the 2023 bond election. Michael Baker, our Chief Operations Officer, and Patrick Martinez, our Interim Executive Director of Facilities, will present.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Cleveland, members of the school board. So this evening, we're going to be reviewing many projects, high dollar items. And so we'll be going through this, and I just want to echo what Dr. Cleveland said earlier. Yeah, don't feel compelled necessarily to make a decision tonight. Again, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. And if we can't answer them this evening, we'll get those answers to you as soon as we possibly can. But there's a lot of material to cover, and I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. The kind of to start things out, typically the district goes to the voters of our community once every 4 years. In the last number of bonding cycles, the amount of our bond has been $60 million. However, in recent years, you know about this thing called inflation and what has happened to property values over the last number of years. So the good news is that our valuation has increased significantly, which means that our capacity to borrow against that valuation has increased. So now instead of 60 million, now we can go for an $80 million bond. Now that being said, as you know, the cost of construction has also increased. So for the most part, it's probably a wash. The district did form a committee of 29 members in order to vet all the projects. The members consisted of district employees, community members, and parents to review a variety of projects. The projects essentially originated from the facility master plan, which you reviewed about a year ago or so, and also some athletic department projects that were not necessarily in the master plan. The committee rank ordered these projects to arrive at a bond balance. And of course, trying to get to that balance is very tricky, and it's a puzzle. And that's what we're going to be here talking about this evening. One of the things that we did in order to leverage the bond funds, Patrick and myself visited with PSFA in order to determine potential matching funds. And so we have been talking to PSFA, and we believe through the recommendations from the committee that we will greatly be able to leverage our bond funds through PSFA and really increase the projects that get completed at our school district. In addition, there were many more projects that we simply could not fund, but we did look at other funding mechanisms. I talked about PSFA in particular. And that certainly is a major contributing factor when we're trying to figure out which projects we should fund. So when we're looking at maybe doing a project that potentially has half of its funding coming from the state, that certainly makes that project a bit more attractive. In regard to matching funds, as you know, Senate Bill 131 really changed the landscape as far as matching funds. Before Senate Bill 131, it was almost worthless really for us to ask for matching funds because our match was just so high. And not only was our match so high, but our offset also killed any money that potentially we could get from the state. But thank goodness for Senate Bill 131. And what it did was it reduced our match by a third, and it eliminated the offset. So now we're in a situation where PSFA funds are quite attractive and can definitely assist the district in obtaining funding for these projects. So what I plan on doing is just really going through the projects that the committee recommended in priority order. The reason why I asked the committee to rank order these things is because when these projects come up for funding, we will complete the application for PSFA. There is no guarantee that we will get the funding. Depending on the particular project, some projects are more attractive to PSFA. And so we really kind of are relying on PSFA to approve these projects. We feel pretty good because we did go over this list with PSFA, so we have a pretty good understanding, we believe, on what will get approved and what will not get approved. So priority number one, again, I talked about Senate Bill 131 and what that means to us. And the good thing about preschool projects is that it reduces our match by about a half. And so the state match is 61%. So that makes those particular projects much more attractive. The committee also looked at potentially building a new school. Again, same match, very attractive. The problem is if we would have purchased or we would have used the bond funding for a new school, it would have taken a lot of the funds out of the entire bond. And this way there would be a lot of projects that would not be funded. In addition to that, if we were to open up a brand new school, it would take out approximately $3 million in operations. And so we would be looking at spending about $3 million additional for CTE. At the same time, another $3 million for a new Shining Star would make it difficult to actually do that at the same time. So the committee recommended in addition to the current school, it would be approximately 7,800 square feet consisting of 6 classrooms. Our cost would be approximately $1.95 million, which would be matched by the state a little over $3 million. Next project. Should we just go through the whole presentation, or do you want to go through each?
Yeah.
Okay. Project number 2, something I know that was very important for the board, and that was a new Independence High School building. The current site is approximately 28,000 square feet. The new facility would be approximately 50,000 square feet. The capacity at Independence High right now is about 200 students. The new facility would accommodate approximately 350 students. The cost of the new facility would be approximately $26 million. The bad thing about this project is there is no PSFA funding. We would still apply, but the likelihood that we would get anything is pretty remote. Priority number 3 is a variety of security projects. The main security project would be at Rancho High School. The biggest cost here has to do with essentially a new building at Rancho High School. And that would essentially accomplish 2 things. One is there's a number of portable facilities on the periphery of the campus. And so those portables are so old and outdated, we need to get rid of them. And it would bring those students that are in the portables inside the new building. It would also provide an area where we could use the Evolve system, so more security. And it would also help us develop what we call an inner perimeter. So Rio Rancho High School, very difficult to secure because of the open campus concept. And these funds essentially would be used to tighten up Rio Rancho High School as well as Cleveland. But Cleveland is much easier in order to secure. And so right now we have architects that are doing a feasibility study on what it's going to take and what the actual cost is going to be. We will give the school board much more detail in June on that. It is likely, because of the age of Rio Rancho High School, that that we may get some PSFA funding for that school. Next priority, new cyber academy. And so one of the things, as you can imagine, which is very, very difficult, is we had lots of projects. If you recall, the facility master plan called out for $380 million worth of projects. Those projects did not include new facilities such as Independence High School or cyber school as well. So projects really, if we were to take new schools into account, we would be north of $400 million. So to try to pare that down to $80 million was quite a challenge. The committee did see value, of course, in this project. It ranked it as number 4, but when it came to balancing the bond, it was quite difficult. So we came up with an option, and that is to continue with the program, not with bond funds, but instead do a lease purchase option. So we would still do the project. We would just use a different funding mechanism in order to get that done. We would use potentially the sale of the old Joe Harris property and the Cyber Academy, the current location, in order to essentially be a down payment. And then we would use the lease purchase funds to pay for that. The downside is that we would have to use operational funds in order to pay off that loan, is essentially what it would be. Project number 5, new Desert Pathways facility, cost of approximately $4.7 million. You're aware of this project as well. The current location right now is at Eagle Ridge Middle School. The program basically is made up of a bunch of portable facilities, really put together. It is a good, secure location, but once again, the lifespan of those facilities, it's time for us to really put a new facility together. One of the ideas is to build that facility next to the Student Support Center, and this way they could easily share resources, which would also help our operational funding. The downside with this project is that there would be no PSFA funding. Project number 6, roofs. Again, not really an attractive project, but very, very, very important. So we really can't conduct school when we have leaky roofs and we have all that valuable computer technology and other stuff getting damaged because of that. The good news is that this is a very, very attractive project for PSFA. They will provide matching funds. The schools that are on the PSFA list for new roofs, Colinas, Maggie, Lincoln, and Rio Rancho High School. The cost to the district would be approximately $8.3 million. PSFA matching funds would be approximately $7.7 million. Priority number 7, again, maybe not a very attractive, but very important projects, has to do with drainage mitigation. Again, the advantage here is that PSFA would provide matching funds. Those projects would be at Enchanted Hills, Stapleton, Sandia Vista, Eagle Ridge, and Rio Rancho High School. PSFA would provide matching funds of approximately just under 1.7 million. Our cost would be approximately 1.8 million. Priority number 8 is Lincoln Middle School. PSFA was, really interested in providing funding for Lincoln, really because of the age of the facility. The project would essentially take the old gymnasium at Lincoln. And by the way, this was on an older bond issue, if you remember, was to actually build a brand new gymnasium, which we did accomplish. Unfortunately, because this project was delayed, there wasn't appropriate funding to actually complete the project. This would complete that project where we would take the old gymnasium and essentially convert it into classroom space. Again, the advantage here is we have 4 portables at that location that are well beyond their lifespan, and we would remove those portables. The cost to the district would be approximately 1.4 million, which would be matched by PSFA at approximately 1.3 million. Priority number 9, I call this miscellaneous PSFA projects. Kind of on the same note as far as maintenance and repair type of projects. We would replace electrical service, some structural problems, plumbing, ADA, and HVAC, the bigger of which is the HVAC at Rio Rancho High School. And as you're aware, in fact, I was just there the other day and I was reading the 1997 construction of Rio Rancho High School. So I'm thinking 1997. It seems like it was just, a few years ago. But the school needs quite a bit of work in order to get it up to its glory days. And so this bond project does have quite a bit of funding for Rio Rancho High School, specifically HVAC. And that's something that we've done with the last bonding cycle because HVAC is just aging. And Dr. Cleveland said earlier, when kids are in the classroom and they're too hot or they're too cold, they're just not going to learn. Again, the advantage with these projects, we have PSFA matching funds. The cost to the district is just under 16 million, and PSFA would pay approximately 10 million. Next project has to do with IT infrastructure. And as you know, IT and our networking system is extremely valuable, and we rely heavily upon that. Some of the projects have been moved off the bond into other funding areas. Total cost of this project on bonds would be approximately $550,000, which would include network upgrades, wide area service equipment, and upgrade to our phone system. The biggest thing is our intercom system. We are going to propose funding that through tech notes. We'll come back to the school board next year to propose that. This year, the project will get going, however, and so again, we'll come back to the board on that project. Priority number 11, special services. So the plan, if adopted by the board, is once Independence High School moves into its new facility, that leaves the building across the street vacant. Special services would utilize that facility for, we call it one-stop shop. And so all the services for special services would move into that facility. Getting that facility up to that use would be approximately $4 million. Unfortunately, there's likely that there would not be PSFA matching funding for that. Priority number 12, athletics. The facilities that would be Updated is at Cleveland High School and Rio Rancho High School. The first project would be ADA parking at Cleveland, right there between the baseball and the softball area. Other projects include replacing the turf at both campuses for baseball and softball. We just completed the girls softball at Cleveland High School infield turf. The other project would be to respray the tracks at both campuses for a total cost of $1.3 million. Unfortunately, there is no PSFA funding with that project. Priority number 13, fine arts. This project is to build a production area for the performing arts. Cleveland High School currently has a production area, but Rio Rancho High School does not. The project actually would construct a new band room. The production area would go in the band room, and the reason for that is its proximity to the stage. The other part of this facility would also include the Evolve system, and this way we could get students in from the rear portion of the campus into the building. The cost of this project is approximately $3 million, and unfortunately, there is no PSFA funding. And in conclusion, the big numbers, the bond funds, as I said earlier, total $80 million. If we were to do it as stated, the likelihood is pretty strong that we would get just under $30 million from PSFA. We could do a lease purchase that would be offset through the sale of property. We were awarded just under $3.2 million in capital outlay. Department of Transportation was awarded $850,000, although not directly coming to us. It will benefit us for a total of approximately $126,711,000. So I think what we did here was try to use our bond money as efficiently and effectively as possible in order to leverage outside funding. We essentially took that $80 million and converted it to under $127 million in projects for the district. So at this time, myself and Patrick will stand for questions.
That was a lot of information. That was a lot of information to go through tonight. Dr. Cleveland, do you have any comments?
Let me conclude after the board. The only thing I would say is I think you get a grasp of the challenges with this, because there's not enough money, and there's pluses and minuses no matter how. And the committee worked hard, kind of agonized over how to make this all balance out. With PSFA funds, you can leverage more money if you go ahead and make that commitment. On the other hand, a little bit of a disappointment, early childhood, just 6 more classrooms. We have the largest percentage of pre-K children not served in the state of New Mexico. And so those are the kind of hard decisions the committee has had to grapple with. And up there's one that we've never done before. That's the lease purchase. It's a different way of thinking about how we might do a building. And I know we've had discussions about, should we look at innovative ways of doing things? So it's just really hard. And it's also very hard in terms of looking at the things that will truly move instruction, which we're struggling with right now as we come out of the pandemic. And then on the other hand, taking care of those facility needs. If we don't do them now, we're going to pay a whole lot more later. And we are trying to protect our buildings that we have. So the committee had a very challenging task as they went through this. And so I think all of us that have looked at this have some mixed feelings on a lot of it, but had to look at the big picture to try to see, what would be the best. So, I think the board probably does need some time to look through this very carefully and look at all of the factors before you cast a final vote. That being said, we need it as soon as we can because we've got a bond issue coming up in the fall.
Yeah. Dr. Cleveland, I'd like to suggest that in the future, some members of our board be on the committee that does the research and has the discussion so that they can come back and give us feedback. I know we asked for that last year, and we asked for it when you were doing the facilities master plan, and it just doesn't happen. And then we get here to this point, and it's so much to digest, and we're all trying to scramble at this point. It would be nice if we were at the table earlier.
Actually, board member Gary Tripp was on our committee.
Yeah.
Were you?
I missed a couple of meetings. I made a couple of meetings, and I apologize that I missed them, but personal commitments. I guess one of the things I like us to consider, to think about, is on priority 2 and priority 4 on Independence High School and on Cyber Academy. It's kind of, what do we get for 26 million and what do we get for 13 million? Because I keep on this horse about Rio Rancho is going to continue to grow. And the more that they look like a comprehensive school, if ever in the future, we're going to have to make it an elementary school or make it a middle school or something like that. Reality, these are great alternative programs, but you got to serve your community. So I don't know what we get for 26 million or for 13 million. Do we get the cafeteria? So in case it has to become a school, what, any thought?
Yeah,
about
so in regard to Independence High School specifically, this is really what we get. We get to increase capacity. So currently there's 200 students there. We get to increase capacity to 350 students. So that is, I think, the significance of that particular project. And as you know, it's an alternative education center. We have students that are struggling at the comprehensive schools. We have a waiting list, and this project would put those students from the waiting list actually in the school. So that's essentially what we get for that. As far as the actual nuts and bolts of the school, we would actually go through a planning process for that. I'm sure the school would include, a cafeteria in regard to maybe some specific amenities. I don't know if it would have, probably not all, certainly not all the amenities of the large comprehensive schools, but it would be tailored more to that alternative program that Independence High School does so well.
So,
Board Member Tripp, I would add though to your point, so the board is aware that Cleveland as at capacity does not have any rooms left, but Rio Rancho still does have some room. You recall was one time we had more students in that building than we do now. So there still is a little bit of flexibility for growth at Rio Rancho, but none at Cleveland.
So just
Completely full.
a couple other thoughts is, and this is just from me, and that is Desert Pathways number 5 and Lincoln Middle School number 8, to me, are excellent projects because number one, I think it would lend itself on the Desert Pathways to give those students an uplift, if you will. And I think we all need an uplift in our life that demonstrates that this community, this school district, that we care about their getting a degree and their education. I think Lincoln allows for more growth when we do something like that, which brings me to the point of the critical questions of a growing community, a growing district, and that is elementary space in the future and middle school space. And we only have 126 million, which is kind of great when you think about all the numbers, but we're not, we might be able to spend a few more years before we build another high school, but I don't know if we're over capacity, if we need another elementary and middle school. They're just critical questions that I have in my head.
Enrollment numbers next
Yeah.
time, so you can look at that. In elementary, we mentioned this earlier, but I just want to maybe refresh your memory. When we built the two last elementary schools, it did give us some breathing room for the first time in elementary in the history of the school district. And so, but we still do have some elementary schools that are very full. Like Ernie Stapleton is very full, Vista Grande is very full. So we do have some that are very full, but overall our elementary is not nearly as bad as it's been over the history of the school district. Middle school, we have some room at Rio Rancho Middle, but we have to look at that very carefully. But Mountain View and Lincoln are, well, the other middle schools are very high right now. And so that was another part of the discussion, whether to do another middle school. But we thought we were hearing from the board that there was a real strong desire to help with those alternative programs because of the waiting list for those. And so I think that's kind of what we heard. As I mentioned, Cleveland is at capacity. We have taken almost all of the open spaces and boarded them up and turned them into classrooms. Rio Rancho still has a little bit of room left, but not a lot. So again, it's just those hard questions, but we do need another middle school. But for right now, we would be able to adjust a little bit on that by redoing a boundary adjustment, like to try to wait one more year to try to look at that for two reasons. One is that we just completed a major construction project at Rio Rancho Middle, so it would not have been good to move students. And this might not be the best year for a lot of reasons to do a major boundary readjustment.
Yeah.
So that's just a little bit of history that might be helpful.
So, and I'll try to stop here in just a second, but maybe Mike, you can help the board out and help me out. What are some critical priorities that we did not have in the presentation? I mean, what are a couple of 2 or 3 or 4 of those issues? Because we're up against a lot of critical issues.
Yeah, so some,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just kind of maintenance and, repair. Some of the ones that we're going to try to get done, depending on how the operational goes. I know we had a conversation about, in our finance committee, about using some of that cash carry for some infrastructure projects. One in particular has to do with expanding and changing the parking and the entry and exit at Vista Grande, for example. So that particular school, a lot of the growth in the city is at the Enchanted Hills area. Vista Grande is growing probably more really than any other school besides Cleveland. They have a particular challenge with traffic moving in and out. Currently, we're doing a feasibility on that particular school. In addition to that, we have Cielo Azul Elementary with a very similar problem. As you know, we have some road construction on King Boulevard, which has really made that getting in and out very, very difficult. That will be done less than a year now. But even when that project is done, we still have challenges and safety issues with traffic at that location. And so that area, also the parking area and people getting in and out of the school needs to be fixed. Another project that comes to mind is a new gymnasium at Puesta del Sol, for example. So that's one of the schools that they do not actually, I mean, they do have a gym, but it's like not a real gym. So, those are just a few projects off the top of my head. Again, when you look at the master plan, a couple of things about the master plan, there's a lot of projects in there, a lot of significant needs for the district, kind of circling back to enrollment. And so although the community is expanding, there's still new construction going on in the community. Interestingly enough, our enrollment essentially is flat. And a lot of people say, when we say this, well, that doesn't make sense. I see houses going up all over the place. Well, there's a couple of things that are happening. Don't forget, we graduate approximately 1,000 1,000 students a year. So we are seeing growth in that regard because we replace those students with new students. But what we don't have is we don't have really any more than a replacement. And so what's happening is the millennials are not having children like us baby boomers, basically. That's one factor. Another factor is students going to other schools, charter schools and private schools. That is essentially taking away from our enrollment. So for the next 10 years in the facility master plan projected that our enrollment would be very flat. And at this time, what they predicted is actually occurring. Our enrollment is flat. And so you say, oh my God, I can't believe this is the first time. And, I've been in this district for such a long time and we've had this incredible growth. Well, it's interesting because in the rest of the state, enrollment generally is declining. So believe it or not, we're kind of in a good situation. At least our enrollment is flat. And so some of the schools actually are losing population, some are gaining. Dr. Cleveland talked about Cleveland High School is essentially at capacity. We do have a little bit more capacity at Rio Rancho High School. Joe Harris, we do have capacity at Joe Harris and a number of elementary schools as well.
So last thing, promise, I'll be quiet. Could we, on the cash carry over, could we possibly pay for things like the safety of checking for weapons, the bathroom repairs, and that pathetic gym at Puesta del Sol Elementary? Could the cash carryover pay for some of these critical projects like a gym or for the safety that we've talked about the last few meetings?
Yeah, we will, when we go, we'll be going over the budget again on May 8th with the Finance Committee. So what we will do is we will identify certain projects. We'll highlight those projects and where that funding is coming from.
Okay.
Okay. No, you are totally fine. Okay. So really quick, and then we're going to go to everyone else. I am not quite firing at my full mental capacity since I've been traveling, but so we have, how many priorities do we have here? We have
11 priorities, I think.
13.
No,
Okay. We have
12.
13. So we have 13 priorities.
Unlucky number.
I know that's true. Why do we have 13? Why don't we fix that? Okay. So we have 13 priorities and we're picking from those 13, or are we trying to go for those full 13?
This is the committee's recommendation.
Okay. So
How I presented this, with the exception of cyber, that we would not actually spend bond money, but instead we would actually continue with the project. We would just do a lease purchase option.
Okay.
And we would provide additional information, how we actually plan on doing that, what the financing is available on that project.
Okay. So we're looking at all of, I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that correctly, that we're looking at all of these priorities. Okay. So my thoughts, and I'm going to go to the board for more questions and such, but is that we might take some time to really digest these over the next little bit and then talk about it again. So we should have a board meeting too that night on May 8th, right?
Yes.
And a finance. So we might take some time and then you can ask questions or send emails and such as we really go through them. That's my thought. I'm happy to vote on them too tonight if everyone else is feeling ready for that. But other comments from the board, Jessica, Tyler?
I just have a question as to how it works. So if we were to adopt the recommendations for the bond priorities as presented, how much leeway does the board have or the district have as things change over the coming years? So, because as if we think about things or we want to move items or remove an item, we have some leeway as things change or maybe funding doesn't come through. I mean, there's a lot of variables that are in here. So how does that work? If you could take a minute.
Yeah, generally how that will work is once the board feels comfortable with the projects, the reason, we need to get an idea of what we're going to spend the money on. But generally what we do is we'll take these projects and we're working with a group of folks that are going to basically publicize the bond and we're going to be out there in the community telling the community, okay, we're asking for $80 million in bond. This is what your money is going to pay for. So the main thing is communication, informing the public. These are the projects that we plan on using. Now, when it comes to the actual vote, there's typically a very general ballot question. And essentially what it will say, and Lauren could speak to the specifics about this, is it will be a very vague statement that the voters are approving $80 million for public school bonds. And so, and this has happened in the past because things will change. The vote is in 23. Our first draw is 24. It goes all the way to 28. So things will change. And I said earlier is we're not guaranteed PSFA funding. So those things could change as well. It likely will change. So in the past, the board has reprioritized projects and certainly can. I think the caveat is that the project or the money is used for public schools facilities.
Mr. Baker, I think it's important also that we make it clear that the taxes are not raised when the bond passes. This bond merely continues and goes forward on the continuum. And so nobody's taxes are raised because of this.
And that
tax rate is not raised, but the taxes may be. And so we are always really careful, as the value of property goes up, the taxes go up, but the tax rate does not go up. And over the history of this school district, the board has not raised the tax rate, has maintained it carefully, scheduling payments and things to keep it that way. And I think that has been a real plus. As Mike said, the actual item on the ballot is very general. And so the board can make some changes if you need to. On the other hand, I would warn you to be very cautious in doing that. Because when you go out to the community and you tell them you're going to do this and then you don't do it, then their confidence is undermined. And we've had to do that a couple of times, and we have made really clear, I hope, to the community why it absolutely had to be done. Before the Great Recession, just to show you the impact on this community, before the Great Recession, we bonded $100 million. And so then we dropped down to 60. So it was a huge drop in our ability to do the things that we needed to do. So, at that point, we obviously were going to have to make some adjustments based on the loss of future revenue. But there are times, to your point, where you absolutely have to make a change, be either based on declining revenue or maybe something comes in and the whole population shifts to another area of the community. So you have that flexibility legally, absolutely do. But we've tried very hard when we go to the community and say, we're going to build you a new elementary school. That's what we do with the money. Or later they'll say, why should I trust you? You said you were going to do this and then you went and did something else. So you can, I think boards have always been very careful about trying to stay as close to what was promised. A couple of years we didn't have enough money. The other thing that enters into this, which is something that is becoming increasingly difficult, is this whole issue of inflation. And so those tax dollars are collected over that period of time. And that building that you originally thought was going to be 30 million, all of a sudden shows up to be 40 million, and you don't have enough. And so that's one of the things about trying to get as much of those big projects done early as you can. And even looking, perhaps, Mike's talked about bond anticipation notes, to try to get it done as quickly as possible so that you're not caught in this inflationary spiral. And, the last building that I built outside of this district, we were at 13% interest rate. And so that was eating up the money we had available. So there are some variables, and you make a really good point in saying we've got to know that we might have some adjustments. We try really hard to do what we say we're going to do.
So, and I just want to say one final thing with that. I mean, I know we have them rank ordered, like you stated, but just because of the time frame of those or the types of situations or the types of projects, that it's also not necessarily feasible to think that those would be done in order of their priority. So and that's what I'm talking about as far as like the leeway to implement these projects. And so I just put that out to the board. I think that the list is comprehensive as far as what the board's priorities have been as we've discussed the need for projects over the last year. And so I don't see anything missing from this list.
Jeff Morgan, I haven't given you an opportunity to.
No, you have not, but that's okay. I want to spend some time with Mike because I got a lot of questions, Mike. I love the numbers and I appreciate what you provided. But yeah, I need to go a little deep with you if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all.
For the sake of time.
Yeah.
Because I really want to understand what impacts PSFA decisions, because you mentioned no on quite a few of these, but that could be a long conversation. So I just want to understand their standards.
Sure.
And then the numbers I have, man, based on what I have, it looks like we could be able to cover some of these and some, but you might come back to me and say, no, Jeff, you're looking at this wrong. Here's what the actual cost is going to be. So I'm out of town the rest of the week. I love to make it this week, but I like to set something up next week with you so we could talk about these numbers, because this is pretty exciting to me, man. It really is.
Me too.
Thanks so much.
Me too.
Okay. So we can go either. So it sounds like with Board Member Morgan, we might take some time with it. I think we should take some time with it. So if we can go ahead and go over those things. So would anyone like to? We can make a motion to move that. Go ahead.
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to delay the action on the adoption of the priorities for the 2023 bond election to our meeting on May 8th.
Board Member Gary Tripp, I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Gary Tripp. And will you take a roll call vote for us on it?
Roll call vote. Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Tripp.
Yes.
Board Member Tyler.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
The motion moves 5-0.
Thank you so much. So thank you. Appreciate it. It really covers all the things that we've been talking about. So I appreciate that as well. Okay, we'll move to item D to consider the approval of amendment number 5, 1-year contract term extension with Southwest Food Excellence. Michael Madrid, our purchasing director, and Dean Gallegos, our food service director, will present.
Board President Galbraith, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland. As was mentioned earlier by Dr. Cleveland when she did the overview of the agenda, this is a 1-year extension request effective July 1 of 23 and taking it through June 30 of 24. The procurement method that was used to initially solicit the services for food services was RFP 2021-009-FIN. In addition, we have the Public Education Department's service contract, and we have State Statute 13-1-150. Each of these documents have the authority to issue multi-term contracts, and that's what you're being requested to consider tonight, is the extension based off of those agreements. Within the background of the document, I just went ahead and included the various amendments that the board has approved in the past. I'll let you read through those. This one really just amends the first amendment, taking the contract for an initial 1-year term. With that, I'll stand for questions, and then I would ask that the board respectfully consider the requested action.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Gary Tripp.
Mr. Madrid, I have a question. That is, I don't read on here what the contract is for. What's the dollar amount that we agree to do service with the food service company?
There is a maximum amount that the food service is going to provide the district. There isn't really a set amount. The dollar amount's based on the unit cost per the meals that is actually served to the students. So it's not like the district is going to be paying out $1 million a year for the next term. I mean, we don't know how many meals are going to be served.
So it's based on every time a meal served, there's a that's what we pay
Correct.
them.
There's breakfast, lunch, there's dinner, and there's meal equivalencies that all have unit cost, and it's all based on the number of meals that actually get served.
What is the unit cost?
I remember that we had a presentation on that before. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what it.
The unit cost varies. It's not the same unit cost for each one of those. What you're going to be getting in Amendment 6 is exactly what you're asking for. Right now, we're in a negotiation for the unit cost for each of those meals. And that's what be the next amendment. I think we're proposing to get that before the board in June.
Okay.
So we'll identify the unit cost and we'll also identify the unit cost we'll be charging the students.
This is Secretary Noreen Scott. I move approval of amendment number 5, a 1-year contract term extension with Southwest Food Excellence.
Board Member Gary Tripp, I second.
Okay, can we go to a roll call vote?
Roll call vote. Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Tripp.
Yes.
Board Member Tyler.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion called 5-0.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. We'll go to our second reading of policy. Dr. Cleveland, did you have anything on that before we move on?
No,
Are you
we
good?
were
Okay.
good. And I guess the comment is that we would continue negotiations if they were, we expect those to go well. If they didn't, then come back and then we would have to decide at that point if we could not negotiate. Is that correct?
That's correct, Dr.
Okay.
We have several factors we're looking at.
But we fully expect to come to an agreement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll go to second reading of policy 604, acceptance of grant awards. Michael Baker, our Chief Operations Officer, will present.
Madam President, Dr. Cleveland, members of the school board. So essentially, there's a couple of additions for policy 604, similar to 605. The first one on 604 has to do with the superintendent and the finance department being informed of grants that are applied for. And secondly, once we get those grants, essentially that we follow all the accounting rules, state, federal regulations, et cetera. And on policy 605, same thing, essentially that we adhere to federal and state regulations to include PED. So I stand for questions.
Okay, do you have any questions on both policies 604 or 605?
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I make a motion to approve the changes to policy 604, acceptance of grant awards, and policy 605, revenues from investments.
It's Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Jeff Morgan. If you could take a roll call vote for us on those.
Roll call vote. Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Tripp.
Yes.
Board Member Tyler.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion called 5-0.
Thank you. And once again, that was for both items E and F. Okay, and then our second reading for policy 1001, student interzone transfers. Sherry Carver, our Executive Director of Student Services, will present.
Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland, I'm here tonight to end the ceremony again with policy 1001. And this one is regarding student interzone transfers. And the main change in that policy, you'll remember, is to address the interscholastic activities. So it brings it into current compliance.
Okay.
And I'll stand for questions.
Any questions from the board?
Madam President.
I'm going to make sure that next time on the agenda, you are not.
I will remember to make that motion and change the agenda for you, Sherry.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to approve the changes to policy 1001, student interzone transfers.
Board Member Gary Tripp, I'll second.
Okay, I have Jessica Tyler with the motion and Gary Tripp with the second. And if you'll take a roll call vote for us on that.
Roll call vote. Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Tripp.
Yes.
Board Member Tyler.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion called 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go into advanced planning. We do not have that executive session tonight. So for advanced planning, the Phoenix dinner is tomorrow night at the Rancho High School cafeteria. Is anyone able to go to the Phoenix? Noreen Scott will be at the Phoenix dinner. Okay, all right. If we can get to those, they're great. They're always fun to be at. I really, really do love them. Then May 5th will be a half day of classes and a professional development day for our staff. The 8th is the finance committee meeting at 4 and the regular board meeting at 5:30. May 13th, we have our Seats and Eats, the Hall of Honor celebration at the McDermott Athletic Center. And May 19th, the Rio Rancho Cyber Academy graduation at 5 p.m. At the Cleveland Concert Hall. And then we get into graduations and more graduations. So that's Cybers, and we have Cleveland's on the 22nd, Independence High School on the 22nd, Rio Rancho on the 23rd, and our last day of school will be on the 26th. So for the rest of the dates on those, please refer to the agenda. Any questions on calendaring for this end of the year?
I would just like to urge everybody to participate in Seats and Eats if you're able to. It's a great opportunity to honor folks who have done a great job for our school district. And moreover, it's plans to be a really lot of fun. We're supposed to really have a good time while we're there. So hopefully any of you can join us.
Okay, thank you so much. Our meeting tonight's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.